places that allow you to dream up new futures, to experiment and to play with others, and to become radically new people. As a freshman in college, I remember getting a flyer advertising a prominent queer bar, Sisters, in Philadelphia. And against the backdrop of a rainbow flag, the flyer read, "All are welcome." I held onto that flyer for 3 months, guarded it with my life, and touched it every day, hoping it would transport me to the gayborhood. I tried to imagine the jovial, the free-spirited, and fabulously queer people that would go inside and be free. My lesbian friends said it was an amazing space and that, of course, I could go with them anytime, but there was just one problem. There was an invisible barrier at the door to Sisters, and only I could see it. The wall was a curse that had been created by my friends, my family, and my teachers. And as I paced outside on the sidewalk, I could hear their words racing through my mind. "You don't belong in a place like that. It will be scary. What if they take advantage of you? Are you sure you're gay?" I was ready to give up, and just as I was about to turn away, the bouncer, she looked right at me in my eyes, and she said, "Come on in, honey. We've been waiting for you." And it was at this moment that the curse had been lifted. And as the bouncer opened the door, I heard the cacophony of laughter, dancing feet hitting the wooden floor, and Whitney's Higher Love summoning me like a siren's call. Now I want you to picture this. When I walk in, here are the main attractions. A 10-foot buffet with pastas, salad, bread. There was a dance floor, karaoke, and the largest group of queer people I had ever seen in one place. Now, as the aromas of pasta sauce, sweat, and sweet drinks enveloped me, the bouncer gave me my orders. Go get your food, something to drink, and sign up for karaoke. Class was in session, and I was an eager pupil. So at Sisters, I learned how to create new spells. I learned how to play, dance with abandon, experiment with fabulous clothes, love queerly, kiki, but most importantly, I learned how to break a curse that prevented me from entering queer worlds across the globe. From now on, I could go into queer bars, LGBTQ centers, radical book clubs, guerrilla queer takeovers, impromptu dance parties in the park, you name it. They were all open to me. So when I moved to San Francisco, one of the first places that I went to when I got off the plane was a drag bar called Esta Noche. And I still remember what I was drinking, the most delicious and savory margarita I had ever tasted. And as I watched Vicky Jimenez, a Latinx drag queen, perform Selena's Bitty Bitty Bum Bum, I looked around at all the other brown faces in the crowd, and I locked eyes with some of them. And we silently acknowledged this important moment. We were listening to Selena in a queer space. I asked myself, how often do we get to hear her music with our own queer ears? Selena's music took on a different meaning for me right then and there. I was learning to listen to her songs in a new way, and her words began to describe my queer heart. The sound it makes, bitty, bitty, bom, bom, when I look into my partner's eyes. I learned to do this at Esta Noche. For me, learning sometimes involves lifting curses. It means figuring out how to poke, to play with, to tinker, and to challenge racism, and to resist the cis-heteropatriarchy that emerges in the everyday moments of our lives, to glitch the system. Glitching the system means learning how to spawn and protect consequential spaces. In spite of unspeakable violence and ongoing erasure, places of belonging and transformation can indeed exist everywhere, in the physical world like queer bars, and in the virtual world like online spaces. During the early days of the pandemic, many of us developed communities in the digital realm in ways that I'd never imagined. In my own living room here in Boulder, I attended virtual drag shows. I tipped the performers, danced with my partner in the kitchen, to online DJ sets from my favorite queer bars. But I was also introduced to queer streamers who invite you into their world through live streams, to watch them game and to play with them. Gamers like BB Bones and Marisol Lourdes have helped me see how video games can be powerful places of learning and transformation. Now, streamers have opened me up to the idea that, yes, video games are the designs of game designers. Now, when we boot up these games, we're stepping into their imaginations and the experiences that the designers create for us. But what if we could change that? What if we could hack that and learn how to become designers ourselves? What if we modified the characters to look like us, to sound like us? What new worlds like the bars, Sisters, and Esta Noche could we create? Worlds where we belong. Worlds where we matter. So who can we become in this landscape of possibility? I started playing with these questions as an assistant professor in 2020. At the time, my partner and I had a friend staying with us in Boulder, and that friend brought his PlayStation with him. I would watch him play, and he introduced me to games I'd never played before, and one in particular really caught my attention, Grand Theft Auto. And as a queer Chicano, I had avoided that game because the storylines, as Paul said earlier, are notoriously known to be rooted in racism, homophobia, transphobia, misogyny, and other forms of violence. But as we played together, there were things that I started to love about it. I had just moved to Colorado, and I was missing my old home in California. Now, lockdown had made it such that we were immediately isolated from one another. But in the game, I could wander around this virtual city. I could drive a car and listen to the radio. I could walk on the streets, and I could learn about citizen struggle through their graffiti that they had emblazoned on the walls. I realized I didn't have to play the game the way the designers intended. I could just explore. I could talk with other players if I wanted. I could participate in this world as if I actually lived there. Now, as the pandemic progressed, summer 2020 also saw the emergence of social rebellion, prompted by the murders of Black and brown people at the hands of police. At the beginning of June, following George Floyd's murder, groups began to demand action, and in-person protests were planned across the world to denounce police brutality. It was at this time that I learned about a group of about 60 Black and brown young men from across the world who had formed a collective in Grand Theft Auto called On the Real Gamer TV. On June 7th, 2020, they suspended their typical gameplay and held a memorial and virtual protest for George Floyd on GTA. They dressed all in black, staged a funeral procession and burial, and even marched through the virtual streets in solidarity with the in-person protests. Now, I'm going to be honest, this experience was really profound for me because it taught me that we humans are pretty ingenious at expressing ourselves in new ways. I just really want to punctuate this. Here was a moment, and a brilliant example, really, of young Black and brown men showing us the way to a new future. Despite the lockdown, they protested. In fact, they invented new ways of mourning and expressing outrage, using the digital realm to participate in worldwide social rebellion. Here it is. Video games can be more than just leisure, escapism, and unfettered violence. They can indeed be spaces of activism. This is when the idea for the Learning to Transform Video Gaming Lab, or LIT Lab, was born. I realized we could use video games to connect with each other and develop our socio-political imaginations. In a time when many of us felt socially isolated, we founded the LIT Lab to meet young people in their everyday practices and to learn how to dream with them, to create new worlds, and to reimagine the violence that's indexed in video games and in our real lives. Part of our work over the past year has involved redesigning the very game that I'd been introduced to by my friend during lockdown, Grand Theft Auto. Our group, a motley crew of high school students, after-school educators, undergraduates, streamers, game designers, graduate students, teachers, and researchers, we're learning how to code and program with purpose. We express our deepest fears, our hopes and desires, recreating new fantastical worlds in the process, making short films like the one that you saw earlier, and holding pride marches and creating queer geographies, all within the context of our virtual space known as Lit City. Video games, like queer spaces, can be spaces of becoming, spaces of experimentation, and they can also be spaces of play. They give us opportunities to dream and to imagine new possibilities for ourselves. I just really want to be clear here. We have to protect these spaces of magic. We have to fight for their existence. We must nurture them. We must share them, and we must manifest them. We can prevent the tragedies of Club Q, Pulse nightclub, and the everyday forms of violence against Black and brown and queer and trans people. We can plant the seeds that grow new worlds, anchored in liberation, love, and resistance. We can become designers of justice. Let's glitch the system. Gracias. Thank you.